So today, we are going to be talking about the deadliest airship disaster in history. You'll be surprised to learn that it is not the Hindenburg.
I am surprised to learn that.
Yeah.
So, Rach, you did an episode a few months ago about hot air balloons.
Yeah.
This ties in a little bit like that. Do you know anything about airships?
I think that my memory of facts about airship disasters are a jumbled mess that include the word hydrogen.
Yeah. Often filled with infamously flammable gas hydrogen. Is my knowledge about
Yes. Well,
blimps.
Well, we might change some perceptions of what a deadly airship disaster is, and we'll find out in a second. Let's begin with airships in war. Ooh, exciting. Off the back of the balloon episode that you did do, Rach, it did not take long for people to start trying to put some kind of propulsion on the back of the balloons that they got into the air.
I definitely recognise that first image on there.
Yeah. So for most of the 18th and 19th century, people were inventing new and unsuccessful ways of controlling balloon flight. Until 1852, when Henri Giffard flew 27 kilometres on a steam-powered airship, which I think is very steampunk, really, isn't it?
Yeah, trying to find, for my hot air balloon episode, trying to find images that weren't just steampunk stuff was so difficult.
Yeah.
Trying to find real historical images instead of...
I love steampunk hot air balloon airship imagery. I think it's so cool. I'd love to live in a little hot air balloon house. That's my dream.
Well, people continue to try and make new and exciting ways of travel until by the end of the 19th century, Count von Zeppelin got into the game.
I know
you may
that.
Recognise the name. He eventually launched. He eventually launched. He eventually launched the Zeppelin LZ-1 in July 1900.
I didn't realise the Zeppelin was, the brand name, I guess, then. That's like Velcro.
Well, yeah. A bit like Wellingtons. Wellingtons are named after Wellington.
Or Hoovers.
Yeah. Sandwiches.
The Earl of Sandwich. I don't know if that's quite the same.
This feels like it would be like an Only Connect question. You'd get Zeppelin for 5 points, and then you get sandwich for 4 points.
I'm sorry, but imagine being called sandwich, though. Being like...
I don't think it was called sandwich. I think it was the Earl of Sandwich.
Imagine still being titled after sandwich. Like, you still have to be introduced by sandwich. Like, that's a food.
Yeah, but it wasn't a food when it was first invented,
I know,
though, was it?
I can't imagine it any other way.
Well, this Zeppelin, the LZ-1, eventually became the basis of all future airship design. The main feature of these rigid airships was that they had a rigid frame that held the structure of the balloon, normally filled with hydrogen. Obviously, this was very dangerous, as hydrogen is very flammable, and accidents were aplenty. However, in World War I, they showed their usefulness in a world long before long-range airplanes, and were used extensively by the German army as a scouting and a bombing vehicle.
That's why so much of the fictional imagery of blimps is so sinister, because you've just got this big, slow whale kind of shape moving over the sky, and it's there to drop bombs and shit. Scary.
They had a much longer range than normal airplanes. At the time, airplanes were very new and they couldn't go very far. So if you were sitting in, say, England and you wanted to scout Germany, you wouldn't be able to send a plane back in the First World War because it was just too far. You'd run out of fuel, you'd run out of steam, or not steam, but you'd run out of fuel. And Zeppelins were a great way, or airships were a great way to do that. It was mostly used by the German army, though. They weren't really used by the US and UK armies or anything like that. So, towards the end of World War I, a German airship called the L-49 was managed to get taken down without taking too much damage. And the Americans were able to extensively study it to make their own designs. A huge advocate for the American airships was Navy Admiral William A. Moffett, who we see pictured here, looking very much like a World War I general.
He looks like the guy in Twin Peaks who plays like the FBI guy.
I've not seen Twin Peaks.
I've not seen Twin Peaks either.
Yeah, I have weird cultural blind spots sometimes.
Not that weird. You can't see everything.
No,
Yeah,
I suppose
yeah.
so. But I do see some weird things that you shouldn't see, though, obviously.
Kyle
We're all
MacLachlan.
guilty of that.
He looks
too.
like Kyle MacLachlan, who played Dale Cooper in Twin Peaks. That's what he looks like.
Oh. I think he just looks like a generic World War One high up in the army dude.
It's the eyes. He's got big eyes.
Definitely.
Whilst not a pilot himself, he did see the benefit of an air force and argued successfully for a naval air force, beating the idea of having like a specific air force that all air vehicles would be a part of. So it was basically like a discussion. Basically, do we have one air force where every single airplane sits, or does the army get a little air force? Does the navy get a little air force? Obviously, there is an air force as well. So it sort of kind of was the best of both worlds, I guess. Primarily building helium-based rigid airships, Moffat oversaw 15 years of airship building within the Navy, culminating in the largest US Navy airship, the USS Akron, in 1931. Alongside its sister ship, the Macon, the Akron was big. It was 240 meters long. It was actually made up of 11 smaller balloons inside a larger frame. Unlike many other airships, all of the engines were held inside that frame, enabling the airship to be aerodynamic. Basically, it was impressive. It was 60 crew max speed of 50 miles per hour and could travel 10,000 miles without stopping. Like a proper beast of an airship. Really, really big. It's really hard to sort of really explain like how big it was, and considering it like flew in the sky as well. 240 meters is such a large amount.
Yeah. How big is a whale? Because that's how I.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Like you see whale's skeleton or something hanging in a museum.
Yeah.
And that's what it looks
I'm
like.
sure like a whale skeleton is only like 60 meters or something.
Then it's massive. Sky whale. Did you say 1,000 miles that it can travel?
10,000 miles.
That's incredible. That is amazing.
Yeah, really like, and this is where that it could like literally travel the entire distance of the United States without stopping.
I think 10,000 miles is like across the whole continent of like the Americas. Like,
Yeah. One of the more impressive things about the Akron and the Macon were that they were also aircraft carriers.
Oh shit.
Like a tiny little plane on an absolutely huge.
You could put a little guy in that. This is just making me think of my partner's just been making loads of Lego kits recently, and there's little things within things. You put a little guy.
So it carried 5 F-9C Sparrowhawk planes, which would then be attached to little hooks, which would then be lowered out at the bottom of the airship, and then they'd fly off.
Wow.
If they wanted to get back onto the airship, they'd have to fly up to the hook and hook on in the middle of the air.
Holy shit. That's scary.
Yeah.
That's so wacky. That's such a wacky thing.
It's such a sort of terrifying concept.
Really. I don't want to be that high up in the first place.
No.
I'm just
no.
visualizing it now. This big, like, slow, spooky blimp just, like, traveling over. And then these just little Sparrowhawk guys just, like, and then they just, like, shoot up.
Like most airships, the Akron wasn't really a combat ship, and most of its life was spent doing tests to ensure that the functionality of this massive airship worked, so that they could use it in war as a scouting ship. However, it did tend to be quite accident-prone. During a trial flight in 1932, it travelled from the East Coast across the entire United States. Arriving in San Diego after a 3-day trip, it tried to park at a military base. Unfortunately, it was not a base that could handle such a big airship, and because it had no more fuel, it was lighter than expected. The lines that they'd had to attach the Akron were unable to safely hold it, and most of the people who were holding the lines ended up dropping them. However, 4 did not, being pulled into the air with the airship.
Shit. Why didn't they drop it?
So 2 of the crew who were pulled up fell from their lines and died. 1 fell on broken arm, and 1 managed to stay holding to it for an hour before he was safely pulled into the airship.
Oh, the pain.
An hour holding your whole body weight up, yeah.
But yeah, you can see in this first picture how, like, they drop a rope and then, like, loads of people hold on to it, and you're meant to put it in and you attach the rope to, like, various different points where it can just sort of be held. But because it was so much lighter, because it just travelled all the way across the United States, it had no more fuel left, it was just pulling too hard for people to actually hold on to. And unfortunately people lost their life. There's a really horrible video that you can see of this happening. Like, it's the thing that, like, they were filming it because it was like a press event or something. Right. So they were, like, filming it come in.
Well, like with the Hindenburg, right? Like,
yeah.
It's such a dramatic scene because it was one of those, like, early things that were actually being recorded, like, to capture such a, like, dramatic event on film was, like, a really rare thing.
The ship also kept hitting its tail fin inside air hangars. Because it was so big and the air hangars were so small, it kept hitting the tail fin.
I feel like
it twice had to be grounded for months.
For that to be happening. They need to get a bigger thing or make a smaller thing.
Yeah, it twice had to be grounded for months for repairs. If you look at the Wikipedia page, it's like first accident, second accident, third accident.
So they just made this really wacky thing just to see if they could, that they never actually made any use for, and it just, like, killed a few people by accident and kept breaking. Yeah,
basically.
Not the worst thing the American military's done.
By far.
No.
Not the stupidest thing they've done.
No.
Okay, so we know it's a pretty accident-prone ship, right? Not to spoil anything, but the next section on the Wikipedia page is titled Loss.
Yeah, we're not still using them.
Are we getting the lost meme in here?
Meme? Oh, that would have been funny, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That would have been really funny.
That's what I was expecting from you.
Future Gen, put the lost meme on there. Look at that. Oh, aren't I very funny for putting the lost meme on this PowerPoint presentation? Oh, I'm so funny, aren't I?
You're so funny, Jen. I can't believe you do that. You got me
again.
3rd of April 1933. This was 2 years after the Akron was first created. The Akron was scheduled to be part of some radio tower calibration off the coast of New England. Admiral Moffat was on board showing the wonders of this ship to Lieutenant Colonel Alfred F. Masery, who was a reservist, and hence he had a rank, but he was actually there mostly as the vice president of Mack Trucks, which was a manufacturing company that was looking to branch out into civilian airships. So he was, like, being shown around the airship. Look at this great airship that we've got. And we're... In total, there were 76 people on the ship, including the 60 crew. They cast off at 7:30 p.m. and quickly ran into poor visibility. It was foggy at first, but by 10 p.m, they started to develop into some nasty, stormy weather. What the crew did not know was that they were flying into the worst storm that the Atlantic Sea had seen in over a decade. Being a bad storm, they were caught in some rather nasty turbulence. The cruising altitude was 500 meters, and they suddenly got pushed nose down, falling to 300 meters.
Shit.
They removed some of their ballast to stabilize and were safe for a bit before being pulled tail first. They fell at the full 500 meters within 2 minutes. The tail hit the water of the Atlantic Ocean. This then pulled the ship completely vertical before it sank completely into the watery depths.
Wow.
Titanic style. Oh.
So the German merchant ship Phoebus saw the lights on the airship falling from the sky and went to investigate. They initially thought that it was just an aircraft crashing into the sea and managed to pull out 4 of the crew. Lieutenant Commander Herbert V. Wiley, who was the second in command of the airship, Chief Radioman Robert W. Copeland, boatswain's mate second class Richard E. Deal, and aviation metalsmith second class Moody E. Irwin. Copeland never woke up after being pulled from the water, and the Phoebus spent 5 hours searching the sea for more survivors, but was unable to find a single person. The Navy sent out a blimp, J3, to assist in the rescue efforts.
They sent out a blimp after the blimp. What? Send out a boat. What the hell? What the hell? Send out a
That's so
rescue
stupid.
boat. What?
It's so stupid.
Yeah, I think I have heard about this.
Why would you do that?
So that also crashed in the stormy weather, killing another 2 people.
Of course it did. What the fuck?
In total, 73 people died from the crashing of the Akron. Most died from hypothermia or drowning, as the crew had no life jackets, and the crash was so sudden they did not have time to set up the lifeboats. Here's a video. I want to show you it. It's the second in command, Wiley, giving a short statement about the crash.
We were rescued by the German tanker Phoebus and are the sole survivors. Just before the accident to the Akron, I was in the control car on the left side of the control car. Our first indication of being near the center of the storm was when the ship shuddered by the water, which was not seen through the fog until we were about 300 feet from the water. The order was given to stand by for a crash. The ship hit the water within 30 seconds after the order, and most of us, I believe, were catapulted into the water. We were in the water about 45 minutes and are now ready for duty in airships or wherever we may be assigned.
So that is a remarkably stoic statement from someone who less than 24 hours previous was in the Atlantic Ocean. And like, the really bizarre thing about that is when he says, yeah, we're fit and healthy and we're ready to be put onto the next airship that they'll take us. Like, it didn't, like, he's not like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna take a break now because I just survived an airship disaster. He's like, I'm just ready to go on the next, whatever they want to put me on there, put me on. It's all good Gucci. It's all Gucci.
Yeah, but if it goes anything like the hot air balloon thing, then there's going to be a gang of people just waiting for him to crash.
Bunch
again.
of rubberneckers.
You know,
They're like, oh, what's gonna happen this time?
After the crash of the Akron and the loss of Admiral Moffat, airships kind of fell out of favour with the US Navy. No more rigid airships were created, and existing airships eventually either retired or crashed. In fact, the Akron's sister ship, the Macon, crashed 2 years later in the Pacific. Fortunately, they had learnt from the Akron disaster, and they had life jackets.
Yeah.
Meaning that only 2 people died when the Macon crashed. At 73 deaths, the Akron disaster was the worst airship disaster in history. But generally speaking, airships were an incredibly unreliable form of air travel.
Really
There
sounds
is
like
a
it.
reason why we do not use airships anymore.
They look cool, not functional, not
Yes.
so
Yes.
good.